The content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior in the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families.
Tonight, we are going to enter the mind of a prosecutor who has seen the darkest corners of crime and the legal system. We're talking about Matt Murphy, about his gripping book, The Book of Murder, A Prosecutor's Journey Through Love and Death. This memoir isn't just murder trials. It's about the emotional, ethical battles prosecutors face when seeking justice for the victims and navigating the complexities of human condition. Matt's unique perspective sheds light on the process and unraveling some of the most heinous crimes and the toll it takes on those who fight the truth. It's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. I am your host, Winnie Schrader. And tonight, I wanted to find a guest that, gets their hands dirty. The people that fight in the courts, whether they're the defense attorney or they're the prosecuting attorney. But how does that affect them? I can't imagine, especially some of these high-profile cases, the toll it takes on these attorneys. I mean, there's cases that go 9 months and they're working day and night. And it does take a toll on them, not only mentally, but the sacrifices they make for family and everything else. So I wanted to get a firsthand perspective of that. Matt Murphy is a former prosecutor and current legal analyst for ABC News. He spent more than 2 decades assigned to the sexual assault and homicide units of Orange County District Attorney's Office, where he tried the most compelling murder cases in America. And during his tenure in homicide, he prosecuted cold cases, famous serial killers, nobody murders, and many more. We have Matt Murphy with his book, The Book of Murder, A Prosecutor's Journey Through Love and Death. Matt, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Okay, well, yeah, the reason why your book really caught my eye is people don't think of all the wheels, everything that's turning when it comes to legal cases. You guys work around the clock. I can't imagine the toll it takes on you just mentally, just having to sit there and deal with this from morning to night. So, what kind of brought you to become a criminal attorney? What led you to take that path as a career?
Well, I had some experiences in college. I had a close friend that was a victim of sexual abuse. I sort of went through that process with her.
Mm-hmm.
I got down to when it came to interviews my first year of law school. You go through, and then the beginning of your second year, you interview. And I had a chance to go into kind of big law. And also had an opportunity to join the FBI. I interviewed with them, and then I got an offer from the Orange County DA's office, and I decided to do that. And at the end of my first day, I knew that's what I wanted to do. It's fascinating work. My original plan was I was going to do it for 3 years and then go out and be a real lawyer someplace and make money and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And what they don't tell you is the longer you stay, the more interesting it gets, and the cases get bigger and You learn more, you get more skill, I tried about 250 cases to verdict over the course of my career, including my bench trials. And it becomes kind of a weird addiction in its own way. And then, you do misdemeanors that, you do that for a couple of years, and I went to juvenile court. Then you do what's called the felony panel, which is just generic felony jury trials. And then you go to what's called a vertical unit. And in Orange County, they do it a little bit differently. So the way a lot of DA's offices work is the police will investigate. They put the reports on one DA's desk, who reads them, determines what charges to file. It goes to somebody else for the preliminary hearing. Somebody else will do the pretrial. And then finally, somewhere way down the line, it winds up on the trial attorney's desk. The way they do it in Orange County, especially in homicide, is you get assigned cities. So Orange County has about 3 million people population wise, and there's only about 8 of us doing homicides at any given time. And I had Costa Mesa, Newport Beach, Laguna, and Irvine were my cities. And so any murders that happen in those cities automatically were assigned to me, which means I work with the same detectives over and over again. I would have my own DA assigned investigator that was internal, who's a police officer assigned to me. And I did that for 17 years, so what it means is the night of the murder, you get the call and you roll out with your investigator, and you're there to sign search warrants and, assist in every way you can, and do everything also to steer the investigation in the right direction, as far as protecting the constitutional rights of criminal suspects and all that. But then I would decide what charges would be filed, who would be charged for what. And then I do every aspect of the case myself. I would do the preliminary hearing myself, or present it to the grand jury. I do the trial and then the sentencing. So you're involved at every aspect of it. And when you approach it that way, homicide cases are a fascinating thing. I mean, they really are. You're there that night, and every murder really is kind of a puzzle.
Right. Yeah, I know. And trying to put those puzzle pieces together. And I'm that way too. I love puzzles. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to true crime, is because you really just want to find any and every way possible that this could happen. And, being a good attorney, that's a good mindset to have, because you're thinking outside the box. You're not just focused on one thing. Because I've seen a lot of attorneys that they just get honed in onto one thing, and that's it. And it's hard to really justify the case, and then if they get upset because they lost the case, well, it's like, well, you didn't really, think outside the box. You were just honed in onto one thing. Now, when it came to being a prosecuting attorney, you're representing the family, the victim's family. What was it like having to handle grieving families and having them sit in a court, because usually they do, and listen to the evidence that is given in the court case? How are you a part of keeping them kind of, I don't know, not controlled, but keeping them on task and keeping their eye on the prize, the goal of getting a guilty verdict?
So technically, as a DA, you technically represent the people of whatever state you're sworn in.
Yeah.
So your client is literally everybody and nobody at the same time. It's the only practice of law, I think, where you never really meet your client, or one of the only ones. But on an emotional level, you really do. You're the advocate for those family members. I mean, you are. And the first thing I would always do after, we charged somebody with the homicide, is I would invite the family to come down to the DA's office and meet the team, meet the people who are actually going to be working on the case. And because of the vertical system, they were going to have continuity, or probably have continuity throughout the entire pendency of the case. In other words, it's going to be my case throughout, from beginning to end. So I would give them my personal cell number, and I think it's the worst thing that a family can experience. And I talk about this in the book. We let most of the gang murders were handled by the gang unit. And that's a different kind of victim. There's different sorts of murders. The child abuse homicide is very different than a conspiracy to kill somebody for money, which is a totally different animal than a serial killer or a robbery at a 7-Eleven. And the gang murders, I sort of start the book with that. I had a Russian mafia hit. It was my very first trial. And when it comes to the gangsters, your victims tend to be pretty unsympathetic, frankly. A lot of times if they're in the gang world, they were last weekend's killer. And a lot of times it's sort of, inner world justice. Most of our victims in the homicide unit, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying this, but they're kind of regular people is a good way of putting it. They were the people that never should have been in harm's way, and didn't do anything voluntarily most of the time, at least gang world wise, to put themselves in a position where somebody might want to kill them. So, when you have a loved one who's murdered, it is critically important for those people that you've got somebody fighting for you and your family, and to seek justice for your murdered child or husband or son. And so that was the deal. So I'd meet with them and I gave my personal cell number. I never regretted doing that, although it came close a couple times. But yeah, you just, I think what really they need is they need somebody, first of all, that will explain the complexities of the legal process to them. But also, they really just need to know that there's somebody who cares, that is in a position of authority and influence over the outcome of the case, that shares in their grief or understands their grief at least, and is fighting for them.
Now, with having to carry that load with you all the time, taking on these cases, how did that impact you personally, in your personal life, dealing with, looking at pictures of crime scene photos of murdered victims, dealing with child abuse and all that? How did that impact you personally on a personal level within your, personal life?
Well, the trials, I think you mentioned it, that some of them you're in trial for 9 months. The longest I did was 6 months, but that's half a year, where it's kind of like being in final exams. Remember finals from high school or college?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're in finals the whole time. You don't have enough hours in the day. You're working on maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep every night, and there's more work to get done than you can possibly do. So it's sort of like triage every day, and then you've got to hit the podium well prepared, or at least appearing to be well prepared, with a suit and a smile and ready to go. And you got to be sharp all day, and it definitely wears on you a little bit, but that's the job. So you embrace that. And to work up to homicide, everybody wants to go to homicide when they first start out. So it's a privilege to be there, and it's a privilege to fight for those victims. And so it's kind of a labor of love, where a lot of people think that what you see, and I mean, I've seen stuff that you cannot imagine. I'd like to, it feels like you've seen it all, but as far as blood, guts, gore, decapitation, decomposition, I've seen a lot, but that's not really what gets to you. What wears on you is the idea that, especially on the tough ones, that you have something horrible was done, and you've seen it firsthand. You saw this poor person that's dead. And then you meet that poor person's mom or dad or husband or wife, or you deal with the real interpersonal apoplectic grief that people go through when a loved one is murdered. And what wears on you is the immense weight of moral responsibility that you carry for bringing justice, as corny as that might sound, for that family. And I embraced it, but it takes a toll. So you wake up in the middle of the night a lot thinking, do I need to do this? Is there something else I can do? Did I blow it in the way I argued this, or should I have tried to admit that? You second guess yourself a lot. And that dream that we all have of being in high school, where we forgot to drop the test for college, and we show up and it's the room and we haven't studied. Have you ever had that? Okay, it's it's a very common stress dream that people have. I fortunately don't have that dream anymore. That one's gone away, and it's been replaced by something. It must psychologically just hit the same lever, but it's instead I'm standing up in a courtroom and I'm arguing a case to a jury that's not listening to me. That's my stress. and I have some family in the front row and people that are depending on me. I mean, and my dreams are so wacky. They'll be like, the judge will be like a poodle, or, there's like sharks swimming through the well, in between counsel table and the bench. So, but that's a reoccurring dream I've had ever since, is that, I'm up there, it's all on me, the chips are down, and nobody's listening to me. That's my nightmare. And I still have that a couple times a week, or I'll wake up in a cold sweat. So
Uh,
that's where the stress comes, is
oh,
that, and especially on the really horrible cases, and in particular, the ones involving kids. That's the
yeah,
ones that really kind of got to me.
yeah. And me being as a parent too, I can't imagine having. I don't know if I could, you know, um, disassociate myself with children. Like with an adult man, I could probably, deal with it. But yeah, as children having such a paternal instinct, I couldn't disassociate myself and have to deal with child murder cases and child abuse cases. It would break me. It would break me. And I commend you, people like you, doing the jobs that we don't want to do, but somebody's got to do it because these people need justice. Um, One thing I want to ask you now: have you ever prosecuted a case whereas up front it looked like this person is the one that did it, but as you start going through the evidence and the case starts moving along, have you ever had it where you're like, you know, I think there might be a possibility it could be somebody else. Like something triggered with evidence that made you think, second guess, is this person really guilty or not?
Well, it certainly happens, and that's it's an important thing to note. It's A lot of people don't understand this. It is the ethical obligation of every prosecutor not to get convictions, but to do justice. So the way it often works in murder cases, I mean, a very healthy percentage, I don't want to say a majority, but a lot of them are domestic violence murders, for example. And you'll have a couple that's fighting, and they're not getting along, or they're in the middle of a divorce, or whatever it may be, and one of them kills the other. And women do kill their husbands, and husbands kill their wives, and it's
Hmm.
it's a very common type of homicide that you deal with, especially if you have, you're working in suburban areas, right? So you'll usually catch the defendant right away. They're either at the scene or they're not far away, and you catch them quickly. And you've got to, they're in custody, which means they have a very limited statutory time before you got to make a filing decision. So you'll charge based on the evidence that you have at the time. And but that's really where a lot of people think the investigation starts when criminal charges are filed, and that's a myth. The investigation really begins at the time of filing. So if you have an in custody defendant, oftentimes you don't know the whole picture yet, and
Hmm.
you'll learn things. So I had one once where I was convinced that there was a lot of money at stake, because there was, and there was a couple that was about to get divorced, and it looked like there was a financial motive to this man who murdered his wife. And so we had the appearance of that. I had a good faith belief in that. We had evidence supporting that. And so I charged murder for financial gain as a special circumstance. So there's murder, and then the special circumstance of the financial gain element, which made it a no bail and potential life without possibility of parole offense. But as
Oh,
we can, but as we continued to, we get the computers, and forensic processing of computers takes a while. And so, a few weeks later, when the thing called RCFL, which is the lab that actually examines computers and cell phones and stuff in Southern California, when we get that back, we learn that the real source, we learned two things. Number one, there's plenty of money on both sides of the family, which kind of is like, maybe this financial gain aspect is not as viable as we thought. But then we got into the computer, and we learned that what they were really fighting about wasn't money. It was that the husband kept going out and sleeping with sex workers and not using proper protection. So he kept bringing STDs home to his wife.
oh
Now that's
no,
right. No, there is no special circumstance for that.
no.
So what we did, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would think there should be, but but I began to entertain a doubt about the idea that he killed her for the money. And what it was, their source of tension was about sexually transmitted diseases and the pending divorce, and that was so I entertained a doubt. So I had to dismiss that special circ. I had to dismiss that, which made him eligible for bail. He was a very wealthy guy, and he fled. He fled to Mexico, where tragically he wound up killing somebody else in a car accident and
Oh,
and
no.
and permanently injuring somebody else. Horrible human being. Still, we eventually they found him in Mexico. It took years, but they got him back up. There's a man named Peter Chadwick, and prosecuted him, and he received a life sentence in state prison, and hopefully he won't get out. But so and then I had another one once where same sort of thing. It was a couple, and they were fighting, and the woman was found. The Her fiance called 911, and we looked at that originally, and he had a whole series of arrests in his past, and he was what we would call a choker. So he would get angry with his wives, girlfriends. I think he had like 3 ex-wives, and he would choke them when he was mad. And our victim had bruising on her neck. She had bruising on what are called her strap muscles, and she clearly had been choked by him. And the neighbors said there was a huge fight. And so at the time of filing, because he's in custody, it had all the hallmarks of a strangulation murder. And I attended the autopsy, and she had all the bruisings and all of the physical signs that you'd expect to see from from that kind of homicide. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, we get the toxicology results back from her stomach contents, and turns out her stomach was full of sleeping pills. So what happened was they did get in a big fight. He did choke her. He bruised her. All of that was real, but he just didn't kill her. And she came to, and she was so distraught over their argument that she went and she suicided. And so that was one where that's the only murder that I had where it's like the new evidence came to light and it was like, wow, okay. And but the thing is that there's no what people have to understand. There's no temptation under those circumstances to go, oh, how do we get around this? He didn't do it, so
Mhm.
we immediately had to dismiss the murder charge. Now, a colleague of mine named Brahim Beitai, who's a top-rate lawyer, he's now a Superior Court judge. He picked up the domestic violence part of that, and he prosecuted that man, and he went to state prison for that. But that happens, and as soon as I told my boss, it's not like, this is a problem. It's not even a question. You don't have to ask permission to do it. I think the new DA wants you to, but I would never have done that, whether he wanted me to or not. Your ethical obligation is to dismiss that case immediately, and that's what I did.
Right, and that would be so hard because, yeah, that ethical and moral line that gets blurred because this guy is a jerk. He belongs behind bars. He doesn't know how to treat people, but
Yeah, it's
he
easier
didn't
than you'd
kill
think.
her,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, it's your job. It's your
Yep.
job to dump it. If you entertain any doubt subjectively, it is your sacrosanct ethical and legal obligation as a lawyer, as a prosecutor, with all the power that you have, to dump it immediately.
Yeah, then that would be hard to constantly have to deal with that. It's like, gosh darn it, you want to get him on something because, like you said, he assaulted her, strangled her, and I'm sure it wasn't the first time. And, so it's just, yeah, that moral. But yeah, you're right. You have to uphold that as an attorney. One question I have is what is the highest profile case that you had to prosecute, and what were the challenges dealing with a high profile case? Because obviously you have the court of public opinion. So how do you navigate all that? Because you have enough stress just dealing with the trial, but then you've got the media, the people, and everything kind of getting involved as well. So how do you manage that and deal with those challenges?
So I was fortunate enough over the course of my career to have great detectives and really good cities. So the upshot of that is I got to do some very interesting cases, and as a result, there was a lot of high profile ones. I had the Samantha Runyon murder. That was a little 5-year-old girl who was kidnapped and murdered by a guy named Alejandro Avila. That was one where the president of the United States was talking about our case on TV, and we had international news media. I did the Dating Game Killer, Rodney Alcala, that was one of mine. That went to trial. That was international media. I had the Golden State Killer case. I was the Orange County prosecutor. He committed murders in multiple jurisdictions. So I was just one of several prosecutors on that case.
Yeah.
But that was a big one. I had Dirty John was one of mine. John Meehan, who attempted to kidnap and murder his stepdaughter, Tara Newell. That went badly for him. I also had the Ed Shin case. I had the Hussein Nairi case, which is about to be a 3-part series on Hulu. So I did a bunch of high profile cases. And when it comes to the media, most journalists tend to be very professional. Okay.
Mhm.
So, and also there are ethical limitations to what a prosecutor can and can't do during the pendency of one of those cases. You're basically allowed in the state of California to talk about charges, what the sentence, what the potential sentence might be, and that's about it. And I never wanted to try my case in the media ever because I knew I was going to be able to do it in a courtroom, which is the proper forum for that. So basically, one of the challenges is, first of all, you want to make sure the family understands that they need to hold the line with you and not go and say a bunch of stuff in the media that can
Yeah.
be used against them ultimately in a trial. And I never had an issue with that. I think sitting down with family members and making sure they have a connection to someone, that will guide them through the process. The family members always listen to me on that. And so I'd keep them quiet and I would stay quiet. And so you have to sort of wrangle the cats, I guess, the different people that might want to talk, and just make sure that nobody says anything, and we let the defense have all the discovery, and we let them do their talking in the courtroom. Now, it is kind of trippy when you're doing a trial and you're mic'd up and there's a camera in the courtroom, and you got national media. Usually, it's what's known as a pool camera. So there'll be one camera, and then they all have to share the footage and the different
Okay.
media outlets will do it. And the funny thing about that is when you've worked on a case for years and you're doing it professionally and you've studied the craft of trying cases, um, you're up there and you got the jury that you've selected, and you got your detective sitting at counsel table with you. You got a judge that is a good judge. We had great judges in Orange County, and a jury that's there to take care of business, and follow the law. And believe it or not, you forget the camera's even there. About a minute after standing up, that once the nerves are out, you forget there's even a camera in the courtroom. And
Oh.
yeah, so so the challenges really come about, like the public pressure on the really high profile ones should
Mhm.
only exist for the elected district attorney. The actual prosecutor doing the case should be insulated from that. And the DA, hopefully, if they're a good DA, they're running cover for their prosecutors and for their investigators, and they're insulating them and making their job easier. Some DAs are not good about that. Some
Yeah.
DAs put internal pressure and kind of freak out and can't handle it, and that's a feature currently in certain jurisdictions.
Mhm.
But generally, I work for really good elected prosecutors that gave me the support that I needed and got out of my way and let me do my job. And that's one of the reasons why my team and I never lost a homicide.
Yeah. Yeah, you have an impeccable record, looking back, I was like, "Oh, wow, he's never lost a homicide case." And that is a good record to have.
For those of you naysayers, I want you to know how much I appreciate how many of you grabbed a hold of my small package after last week's show. It is out and available. You can get both of my books, The Other Side, A Guide to the Paranormal and Ghost Hunting, and my brand new book, Theater of the Mind, Tales from the Darkness. Both books are out. One, of course, kind of a how-to ghost hunt book, and the other story book of strange supernatural occurrences all around the world. You can get your hand on my small package by just ordering it right off of my website. You can go right to paranormal60.com, scroll down on the front page there, or go to the shop and scroll down and you'll see our book bundle. And it was I was so humbled by the fact of how many men put their hands on my small package at the end of last week's show and bought it. It was great. It made me feel loved and wanted. I'm not going to lie.
Did you know that radio just got a little extraterrestrial? That's right, Dave Schrader is back on radio with the Paranormal 360 every Sunday evening, 7 to 9 p.m. Central on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station. Just download the Odyssey app and look for the WCCO logo, follow the station, and listen live. That's the Paranormal 360 on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station.
You know, that kind of dynamic in the courtroom and how you have to, it's a delicate dance that you have to do. And when you have outside influences, when you look back at like the O.J. Simpson case, the Menendez brothers case, which is very popular right now because now they're trying to see if they can be released. So they've made a resurgence. If the cameras weren't in the court for OJ, would he still have the same verdict? Things like that. It was really nice though to look back and to kind of see the legal process. Because the only legal process we were really exposed to was Judge Wapner in the People's Court. But a little bit more to law than just, like low civil lawsuits for $3,000. I wanted to see like murder cases and homicide cases and stuff being tried in court. So it was kind of cool. But I have a feeling it's also kind of takes the justice out of the trial itself, because you had the Casey Anthony case. That thing just blew up and everybody was shocked by the verdict. But was the court having the cameras in the court? Was that the issue with that case as well? Do you feel like cameras in the court can sway a verdict?
Well, I think there were certainly some judicial concerns after the OJ case. But I think that verdict would have been the same.
You think so?
Yeah, well, I really do, because Johnny Cochran was an excellent trial advocate, and Christopher Darden and Marcia Clark just proved themselves to be kind of outgunned by the defense team on that. I think that the dynamics of that trial, especially the racial overtones of the whole thing, and the fame of O.J. Simpson, I think that all things being equal, but no cameras in the courtroom, I think that jury would have done the same thing. I disagree with their verdict. But then again, in their defense, they were basing it on, part of being a prosecutor or any sort of trial lawyer, part of the job is performative. And Johnny Cochran was really a master at that. And Christopher Darden and Marcia Clark were not. So that jury, given the composition, my experience in Southern California, I think they would have done the same thing, cameras or no. Menendez brothers are up. The first trial had the cameras in the courtroom, and the second trial did not. And I think they were trying to rein in the circus that the first one was, and I think that was a good move. I think the jury made the right decision in the second trial. Frankly, I think there were some real sober, cool minds that decided that case based on the evidence and the law. And I think that what's interesting now in our current environment is the TikTok warriors who are essentially tourists in these cases, who see something on Netflix or see some spot on YouTube and decide they know everything about a case, and they weigh in and follow Kim Kardashian like the Pied Piper of these guys must be released because Kim Kardashian says so. And I watched a Netflix documentary, and that's unfair to victims of violent crime. It just is. It is. It's unfair and it also, one of the narratives out there is like, we didn't know anything about the sexual abuse of males or boys or men back in the early 90s. It's just not true. Maybe the public wasn't as aware of it. Maybe there's less stigma now, but the law certainly accommodated that. And because the law is based on reality, and our laws are fundamentally, our system of justice is based on real people, real life, real cases, and what's known as stare decisis, which is these cases that are decided, that are written, that sort of survive the test of time. And that was the law that exists now in California is pretty much the same as existed then, regarding sexual abuse, and that's a defense that they ran. But it's
Mhm.
like I kind of worry for the emotional thing, like sexual abuse is bad, so they've got to get out, and they skip the whole, well, do we believe it? How does it fit into the criminal justice system? What does this actually mean in the context of, they shotgun murdered their mom and dad, like,
Yeah.
and they did so with the intent of financially benefiting. So what would sexual abuse actually, how does it work legally? And those are, it's hundreds of years of really smart people, judges and lawyers, people that spent their entire career and lifetime crafting laws that work and make sense and are properly considered and that withstand appellate scrutiny and all of that sort of thing. And somebody who sees a friggin' video on TikTok, that people are amazingly comfortable just substituting their judgment for that.
I
And
know.
that gives me pause. So,
Right. And, I was just talking to my daughter about this yesterday because she's, a teenager. She's 17. She's a senior in high school. And I asked her, I said, so is the TikTok brigade, are they still pushing for the Menendez brothers to be released? She's like, oh, yeah, it's getting bigger and bigger. And I'm like, I mean, I understand, like, if the abuse happened, okay, we understand it happened, but they still brutally murdered their parents. And then now they're trying to compare it to Gypsy Rose's case, saying, well, she got released. Why aren't the Menendez brothers released? Well, but you got to think Gypsy Rose had physical evidence of abuse her entire life, all the medical procedures, all the stuff that her mom did to her, not justifying that murdering her mom was okay because of that. But the dynamic was a little different because there was more actual evidence. I mean, when you talk about, yeah, our dad Jose sexually molested us, is there actual physical or some type of tangible evidence to make, say, okay, yes, this did happen. We just got to take their word for it. And yeah, they were flashing. They after their parents died, they were buying cars, buying this, buying that. That did not look good for them at all. And I don't understand why Leslie Abramson did not tell them to knock it off. You know what I mean? To me, that was just like, as an
well,
attorney,
she wasn't retained yet.
oh, she wasn't at the
No,
time?
she
I
wasn't
thought
retained yet. She was retained after they were arrested, which was months and months after the murders. So,
oh, okay.
and yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, right? Number one, yes, Gypsy Rose. First of all, it's completely different,
Mhm.
and she didn't allege sexual abuse, and it was her mother suffered from what's called Munchausen syndrome by proxy, and it's all medically documented, and there was nothing wrong with her, and she was doing charity events and all that. So there's no question of the abuse that she was subjected to. So it's a completely different kind of case. When it comes to Lyle and Eric, the quote unquote new evidence is a letter written by Eric, who, remember, these guys lied to the 911 operator, and they put on, it was performance art. We
Mhm.
came home from a movie and saw this. They lied to the 911 operator. They lied to the first responders. They lied to the police at the scene. They lied to the detectives. They lied, and these are demonstrative falsehoods, not even regarding sexual abuse. They lied about the shotguns. They lied about so many different things, about coming home from the movie and discovering them. They lied and lied and lied over and over again in virtually every aspect of it. And they've also told so many different versions when they finally got around to alleging this sexual abuse, which wasn't for months and months. They've told different versions of that, and now everybody's back on the Jose Menendez. Everybody's forgotten they alleged that Kitty Menendez, their own biological mother, was also sexually abusing them, and that is, I can tell you from working sex cases for 21 years, biological mothers molesting their teenage boys is exceedingly rare. Why it's rare, I don't know, but it is exceedingly rare. Stepdads, fathers, boyfriends, soccer coaches, ministers do it all the time. Okay, it's like an everyday occurrence. Biological mothers doing that to teenage boys. And let's not forget, Eric was a professional athlete and his mom weighed like 100 pounds. It's like, dude,
Right.
and now nobody believed that then. And now it seems like the TikTok brigade wants to conveniently sort of forget, oh, yeah, they said a bunch of stuff about the sexual abuse that I don't believe, but I want to believe this part of the sexual abuse. So, when you're innocent or when you have true mitigating factors in your favor, or there's a contextualizing reason why you kill somebody, you don't convince people by telling 18 different versions of that and a bunch of demonstrative falsehoods. So I
Right.
don't believe that Kitty Menendez ever molested her kids, but they claimed that she did. And everybody seems to have forgotten that. So they lied about the sexual abuse, which means now all of a sudden there's a letter written by one of the liars that's uncorroborated by anybody. And we're treating it like it's a video of them in a casino in Vegas, alibying them at the time of the murder. And it's, people need to take a breath, recognize that what we see on Netflix isn't always real because that's called TV, and
Mhm.
realize that when you're advocating openly and emotionally for the release of two guys that reloaded a Mossberg 12 gauge shotgun to shoot their mom in the head, that they better have a really good reason for it. And another thing to remember is that under California law, you can have pure motives as 80% or 90% or 99% of your reason for wanting to kill somebody. But if you're motivated in any part, by financial gain, that is first degree murder for the purpose of financial gain, which is exactly what they were convicted of. So it's like again, the law exists for a reason. And this idea that, oh, no, they were sexually abused and everybody back then were like cavemen and, didn't think sexual abuse was bad. That's just nonsense. It was a factor of the law then. The jury carefully considered it. In the first trial, the court carefully considered it in the second trial. And, the chips fell where they may. And also, it's worth noting, the California appellate courts have repeatedly upheld their conviction, with full knowledge that there were allegations of sexual abuse. So the allegations of sex abuse are not new. They've gone through the system and they were rejected in court. So now it's like, well, I saw it on Netflix, so it must be true. It's a little maddening to me because here's a news flash for everybody. Every killer has an excuse. Everybody that
Oh,
will
yeah.
murder another human being, once they're caught and the identity is learned, they immediately pivot to lying about the reason why. And nobody should be shocked by that. And
Mhm.
sometimes the reason for killing a human being, they're telling the truth. But usually there's one version of that, not 17 like Lyle and Eric Menendez.
Right. Yeah, they're just coming up with things to skirt around the real issue of financial gain. That's the real reason they just wanted the money and rid of
Went
their
on a
parents.
lavish spending spree immediately afterwards, and that's what caught the eye of detectives. And if they're motivated at all by that, and look, there was evidence in that case. Let's not forget. Again, everybody's forgotten this, that Jose Menendez, who was a domineering and controlling man, that he was upset with them, or upset with Lyle at least, and threatened to write them out of the will. And before he could do that, he got murdered.
Uh-huh.
Gee, what a coincidence, and they're talking about buying, like, Lyle dropped out of school and bought a chicken wing franchise immediately after that. He bought a Porsche. They went on a spending spree. They went to the Caribbean. Eric hired a full-time tennis coach. He's a professional athlete. He's doing all these tournaments in Israel. Like, there's reasons why they were convicted, everyone, and
Yeah.
there's reasons why their conviction was upheld on appeal. And a Netflix story and Kim Kardashian should not be able to change that, but it might.
Mhm. And, I mean, it's not a bad thing to reexamine cases if you feel like, justice wasn't served, but when it's just like this, when you have, like, these, like you said, uneducated people just spouting out things that aren't factual or, things like that, and then people are taking that as a word, and now all of a sudden you have this big movement of freeing the Menendez brothers, and it's just like, "What the heck happened here?" And I don't understand. I think it's because our younger generation, they uh, try and be tolerate, but it's like, I don't know, they pick and choose, but I think that's why they're globbing onto this. because of the sexual abuse. Because yes, I mean, back then, sexual abuse wasn't talked about openly as it is today, and not that it wasn't. People didn't, you know, censor it, but now when we have social media, we have such a bigger outlet to get the word out about these things. So I think that's why we're having these movements. And like now,
Yeah,
Gypsy
lynch.
Rose,
There's a reason why lynch mobs are bad, right?
yeah,
Like the emotion of a mob, or a whole bunch of people who are half educated at best about the actual facts of a case.
hmm
That's why we have courts, so that the community doesn't go and lynch people, or murder people, or tar and feather people who may not have the facts. Like the emotion of a crowd, that's why it's called a mob, right? Like,
hmm
and it's equally wrong when it's a mob demanding somebody's freedom. It's
hmm
this is why we have courts, and this is why we have judges. This is why we have the law, and our law is based on common sense, and when it's applied properly, it works. But it's like people running around because they saw something on TV demanding the release of two guys who murdered their parents is just as bad as a mob running around because they think somebody committed a horrible crime and demanding that they be, there's like that, yeah, there's famous scenes with Wyatt Earp, protecting, criminal defendants against mobs that wanted to drag that cowboy out of the jail and string them up.
hmm
We don't do that. We have courts for a reason. And, we'll let this process play out. But I mean, personally, I have no faith that the DA of Los Angeles, George Gascon, who's the worst thing that's happened to public safety in the history of my fair city where I grew up, and
yeah,
live now. I have no faith that he's going to make the right decision on this. And in my opinion, he should be properly advocating for the integrity of that conviction. And I knew David Cohn. I would consider him a friend of mine. He was the second prosecutor, and he was the prosecutor that convicted them. And he was a
hmm
good man. He was meticulous, and he's the type of guy who didn't make mistakes like that. He wanted to get it right. He was a prosecutor's prosecutor who understood that his job was to do justice, and that's in full light of all the allegations of sexual abuse. And I knew him. None of the TikTok warriors did. Kim Kardashian certainly didn't. And
hmm
I think that's something that people need to chill out and think more, and TikTok less.
yeah, and that could be why, because the second trial wasn't televised, so nobody is going to take the time to go through the court transcripts and look at what evidence was presented in that case. No, they want to just see a 15-second clip of
Yeah, you're
something
right.
and then
You're absolutely
base a
right.
judgment
Yep.
off of that. So,
Yeah.
um, one thing I have, going through being in this field for many, many years, um, do you think the justice system could improve, and what kind of reforms and changes would you like to see happen within the court system? I mean, it could be something as small as, trying court cases quicker or things like that. But do you have any, like, think that if you add this or do this, it could make things work better for the court system?
Well, as far as speed goes, again, on an emotional level, of course, it'd be better if everything went faster. But, for homicides and the really heavy stuff, when you're talking about somebody that's been accused of committing the worst crime, who's looking at spending life in prison,
hmm
I think it's very important that courts get it right. It's very important that they honor the due process rights of somebody, and that their defense is afforded every opportunity to properly investigate and properly present evidence. In California, we had a series of hugely impactful reforms in the early 2000s and the late 1990s, when they enacted things like three strikes and one strike sex offenses, and a thing called Prop 115 that allows preliminary hearings to be done via the hearsay evidence from the investigating officers. So we had a bunch of those. And that what we had before those reforms is we had essentially a revolving door system of justice, where violent offenders, particularly sex offenders, kept getting out and
hmm
re-victimizing people. And in my Rodney Alcala case, that's Anna Kendrick has a new movie coming out on Netflix tomorrow, called Woman of the Hour. And Rodney
hmm
Alcala is one of the most vicious and prolific serial killers in American history. And he was a handsome guy at a genius level IQ. He was a varsity letterman, graduated from UCLA Film School, which is impossible to get into, and then he kidnapped an 8-year-old girl in 1968 named Tally Shapiro. And a Good Samaritan saw it. A heroic police officer saved her life, but he escaped. He ran out the back of his house and got away. And they found him working at an all-girls sleepaway camp in Vermont 3 years later. And so he was extradited back to California. He was given a life sentence under the indeterminate sentencing guidelines of the day. And picture this: this is an 8-year-old girl walking down the street. He's that guy. He's the pull up in a car and convince her to get in the car. And she's in a coma for 32 days. He raped her. And when the police found her, she had a metal bar on her neck, but she was absolutely brutalized. And the California Board of Prison Terms released that man, get this, in 34 months. He did 34 months of 34 months of custody time. He was released. And after his release, he probably killed, I mean, depending on which detective, I talked to the lead investigator who ultimately arrested him in 1979. His name's Craig Robeson. He's a hero. He's a 27-year-old first-time detective. Then he became a DA. Then he became a Superior Court judge. He's a sitting Superior Court judge now. He's one of the smartest guys I know. He estimates that all-cause victims are well over 100 people. So 34, he commits that crime. He gets arrested, he gets a life sentence, and they paroled him in 34 months, and then he murdered 100 people. And also a lot of serial killers like to prey on sex workers because the dangers of that work. They wind up in positions of vulnerability, in dark alleys, in cars with anonymous men. And so a lot of serial killers, from Jack the Ripper all the way up through, Rex Heuermann here in New York, they target those women because they're easy to get. Rodney Alcala would follow women home from bars and restaurants. So the women that he victimized included, like, the final arrest was a 12-year-old little girl that was riding her bike. That was his final victim, Robin Samso out of Huntington Beach. He raped and murdered a pediatric cancer nurse named Georgia Wickstead in Malibu, a legal secretary back when they were still called secretaries in Santa Monica named Charlotte Lamb, a computer programmer named Jill Parenteau. And these are salt of the earth, sort of all American, beautiful young women who were loved by their families, doing everything right, not making mistakes. And he would follow them home and break into their houses and savagely and sadistically rape them and murder them, and then take pictures of their dead bodies. And that was a man that he had a life sentence, and he was released. And California, at least, is careening rapidly back to those days of, no cash bail and letting these guys out. And, George Gascon in Los Angeles County, the elected DA, refuses to let his prosecutors go and oppose what are called BPT lifer hearings, which are rapists, child molesters, and murderers who have life sentences who come up for parole. He will not let them go and oppose that. So it's basically, there's no representative with the file in the room to talk sense into the parole board when the defendant gets out and blames somebody else or says it didn't happen the way they say. That it's absolute madness. So long answer to your question, we had a bunch of reforms, and I think that what we need to change is this idea that we're going to do this crazy catch and release stuff when it comes to violent offenders, particularly sex offenders, because I can tell you from 26 years doing this job, there's no fixing those guys. If they're a serial sex offender and they're in prison, when they get out, they're going to continue to do it.
Right.
They may not get caught. They may get better at evading authorities and evading the police, but they are virtually guaranteed to do it again, and to do it sometimes with increased violence and severity.
Oh gosh. Well, one question I like to kind of cleanse the palate at the end of the show. Because when you talk about dire stuff, it's always nice to add a little bit of humor or a little bit of just lighthearted topics. But was there ever a case where you were just like baffled by, and it was almost humorous? Like, what is happening here? Did you have a case, anything like that, where it kind of, left you chuckling every time you left the court that day?
Oh, there's too many to count. I
Oh,
mean,
is
when
that
you're
many?
no, when you go into, a lot of murder scenes are committed in people's homes. So when
Mhm.
you go in, you find somebody's house in the final moments of their life, and all of the idiosyncratic picadillos that somebody might have. Like I mean, it's kind of humor balancing out some real some horrible things. But like
Yeah.
we had one murder scene, and it's sad, but we go out and this guy had a jacuzzi, and he had a pet frog that lived in the jacuzzi, that just swim around in the jacuzzi, and there it was. We went my very first murder scene. I walked in, and the person who committed our poor victim was on his back in the kitchen. He'd been shot multiple times. The woman that lived there, who turned out to be our killer, she she had some time alone before the police got called, and she staged the scene. She put a knife in our dead guy's hand, and for reasons that we never figured out, she also, all around the house, she propped up Polaroid photos of an erect penis in various stages of arousal. There were probably 30 of these things, you know, propped up for us to find, just everywhere. And yeah, you see a lot of really odd things. And I mean, I had one with a couple of skinheads that robbed a 7-Eleven. I talk about this in my book, and I pull up, and one of these knuckleheads, they got separated when they were fleeing. They killed the poor clerk, and they go running out of the 7-Eleven, and they're stripping their clothes off as they're running. And I think they were trying to change their appearance, but just incredibly stupid, because all their clothes, of course, are covered in their DNA,
Right.
and they dump the murder weapons, which is also covered in the victim's blood, and one of them gets back to the car, and he decides to just leave his little buddy in the bushes with no ride home. And so a police dog catches him, and it was one of the coldest nights of the year. And so he's a skinhead. He's a white supremacist gang member. So he's covered in swastikas, wearing a T-shirt and basically boxer shorts. And that's not suspicious at all at 3 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
at the end of a trail of evidence. It's like the yellow brick road, but with swastikas. And there he is in the bushes, and there's a police dog, and they're like, "Okay, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I was at a party at a friend's. Where's your friend's house? I don't know." And so we put them in the back of a police car, and the police did. At This is an Irvine case, and this car was wired for sound, and the
Mhm.
police, and this is really good police work. They put the two of them back together, in the back of the car before they transport them to the county jail. And it's all mic'd up, and they're like, wait, and they do this whole acting thing where it's like, do you have the paperwork? Are we supposed to take them together? Okay, you two sit here while we figure this out, but don't talk to each other. And they close the door, and you know what happens next. And they're,
Yep.
oh, dude, I was drunk, blah, 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 blah. And so yeah, there's no shortage of humor that you encounter in that job, and it keeps you sane, actually,
Yeah.
especially in sexual assault. You need the dark humor, otherwise you'll go crazy.
Right. And I would totally be if I was in law enforcement or anything, I would be the dark humor queen. Because yeah, it helps you cope with what you're seeing and what you're dealing with. So with your book, the Book of Murder, um, what do you want readers to take away from the book? Like, what's kind of your goal set to say, this is my life, and take what you can get from what I said, absorb it. And what is kind of your goal with that? Like,
So I think
understanding prosecutors and what people go through?
no, I think that there's a couple of takeaways I hope people take from the book. Number one is that life is precious,
Mhm.
and give your loved ones an extra hug, because you never know, when you work nothing but homicide cases, you never know when that's going to end, whether it's a bolt of lightning, a truck with a flat tire that careens off a road, or a murder. We're all here temporarily, and we've got to enjoy life, and we've got to, we got to love our loved ones. Okay, so that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is, for every horrible murder, I really wanted to emphasize in the book how many good people there are behind the scenes trying to bring justice to that victim's family. You got one killer followed by about a half dozen dedicated detectives who aren't going to complain that it's freezing cold and they haven't eaten in 18 hours. You've got crime lab personnel who are going to show up without complaint and do their job. You've got good jurors, good judges. You've got a lot of really hardworking, good people behind the scenes trying to achieve justice, and they don't get enough credit. And I wanted to talk about that in the book. And then, finally, I hope the takeaway is, every once in a while, we get down. Our country's hugely divided, and it's very easy to get down. And I hope the final takeaway of the book is, the good guys are still out there, and the good guys will still win it when the chips are down. You can still win it. The good guys still win, and that's what I'm hoping people take away. So it's, I'm asked often, how do you, doesn't how did this get to you? How did doesn't this destroy your faith in humanity? And in fact, my
Right.
work was the exact opposite. It reminded me, regardless of politics, whether somebody's Democrat, Independent, Republican, that the vast majority of people are good and they want to do right. And the vast majority of jurors certainly are good. And judges, most of them are good. And cops, most of them are good. And, that the good guys, still can win a few. So,
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it just kind of gives you some hope that, I know it's like when you're bombarded with stuff like that, and maybe that's the problem with society today, because everybody's bombarded with negative stuff on social media. Maybe that's what's happening, because, yeah, when you have it constantly thrown in your face, how do you cope with that? So, yeah, appreciate the good things in life. Appreciate your loved ones. Don't take them for granted, and just kind of keep that open mind to things. But yeah, it's just, I couldn't imagine having to deal with that, and trying to cope with it at the same time. I would have to disassociate myself completely. But it's special people like you that do these jobs, and thank God for people like you, because not everybody could do what you did, and you continue to do the good work being a legal analyst for ABC. Now, is there a website or anything where people can reach you and check out any other books that you've written, or any type of media appearances or book signings?
sure. Matt Murphy Law on Instagram. And I'm trying to keep people in tune with when the next book signing is going to be. I'm kind of Instagram lame, so I'm trying to get better at it. But I'm doing it all myself right now. We're working on a second book as we speak.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll have a proposal ready, and if all goes well, that'll be out in about a year. That one's going to be focused more on the nitty gritty of the courtroom drama, and I'm focusing that on serial killers specifically. So
Ooh,
I think people will hopefully like that. I tried 13 people over the course of my career that technically meet the FBI definition of serial killer. Like, there's about a half dozen, six or so that I truly consider to be serial killers. But
yeah.
yeah, so I only talk about one in this book. And so, yeah, for the next one, it's going to be a whole bunch more, and get a little more in depth about
Ooh,
the court
I would
process. So,
Yeah, definitely have to have you back on for that book, because I did, that's what I crave. I love the evidence. I love the dynamic of a court and how it's played out. It's like a soap opera. You got
yeah,
an offense and a defense, and yeah, and just the intricacies, that how it works, and taking everything that goes into the court, and what's presented, and then the jury gets it, and then you have the verdict. And it's just like, it's, I don't know. I may be weird, because when I was a kid, I used to just like sit there and watch documentaries on serial killers and things like that, and not watching Saturday morning cartoons. But I did it because I like to see the psyche of what's going on with the criminal. Why do they do the things that they do? what happened to them to make them want to murder many people for no reason. Those things kind of always get to me, and I always want to know why. And watching court cases, that's exactly it. It gives me my answer. It gives me the stuff that I need to kind of make my own decision. And I kind of have my own little verdict watching those. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Now, I will have a link to the book in today's description. Please, if you purchase the book, rate and review the book. It helps these authors get that book seen out more. And now, is there anything that you want to leave us with that may be important that you want to get out?
No, the Audible is doing particularly well.
Oh,
I don't get it because I can't stand the sound of my own voice, but that's doing really well. So the people, they feel free to listen to the Audible. People seem to like it,
yeah.
or buy the book, and there's also a Kindle version available. But yeah,
Yep.
the reviews really do help.
Yes, and I always urge my listeners to do that because, like I said, it helps these books get pumped out more, in people's feeds and ads and stuff. And I'm definitely going to pick up your book. I'll do the audiobook because I'm a busy mom. But yeah, well, thank you so much. Again, the book is The Book of Murder, The Prosecutor's Journey Through Love and Death. Well, thank you so much, and I hope to see you all next week.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.